So a very warm welcome indeed to the Glasgow University Union. I always love a bit of wood panelling, and it's a pleasure to see many of you here and to have you on the call. As many of you know, I'm Stephen Forster. I'm a professor of French, and I'm head of the School of Languages and Cultures here at the university. And I'm thrilled that you're going to be hearing today from our three wonderful guest speakers. I'm not trying to hide them from you. I'll present them in due course, and we'll bring them up for the Q&A on the chairs. Subsequently, we have Baroness Jean Coussins as our keynote speaker, and we have two SMLC alumni who have kindly returned to campus today to share their experiences since they graduated from our very school with languages degrees. And they're Jennifer McHarrie, who is director of the Bòrd Gaelic, and Jackie McKee, who is head of marketing at Isle of Arran Distillers. And we're very grateful to Jackie for having brought some whiskey samples that are parts of the fruits of the journey on which a languages degree can take you, and they'll be available in the Hetherington afterwards. So do please join us there if you can. Ahead of the guests and the drinks, I just want to say a few words of introduction and why we're here and how we're here. On the how we're here, thank you very much as well to Teresa Newman, who is, as ever, has been working heroically behind the scenes to organize things. So thank you, Teresa. And on the why we're here, I want to start with a question that you often see in surveys and publicity campaigns. And that is the question, what is the value of languages? I have certainly asked that question. I've certainly answered that question. At the same time, I think that question implies that there can be negative answers to the question about the value of languages as well as positive. And it invites a suggestion that the existence of languages themselves needs to be justified. But like gravity or the ability to engineer the world around us, language, culture, and communication are co-commensurate with human life on Earth. In a sense, asking what is the value of languages is equivalent to asking what is the value of human beings. Maybe then we should rephrase the question, asking instead how to unlock the value of languages and cultures, how to understand the vastness of the landscape with over 7,000 active languages recorded by UNESCO, and how to share that value fairly and positively. Not that language is already an inherent good. I recently saw the film Arrival, in which Amy Adams plays a linguistics professor who's called in by the military to decode the strange, inky language used by advanced beings who land on Earth. Her character recognizes that language is the foundation of civilization. It is the glue that holds the people together, she writes. Language is the first weapon drawn in a conflict. And that idea of language as a weapon drawn in war continues to be terribly relevant today, when wars against different groups of people are also wars against the languages, the cultures, the ways of life of those people. And those wars are persecuted through language. Like fire, money, the internet, or countless other human phenomena that pull us in, even as we struggle to control them, language is capable of great power, great harm, and great good. Language has to be pointed in the right direction. And the directions in which languages can take us are vast and varied, and that is a central theme of today's event and of what you will hear shortly from our guest speakers. Languages and cultures take those who study them to myriad places. And in that light, I'm especially pleased that we have many students of languages from our own school and outside it here today, and that you can hear directly from our guest speakers. There is much doom and gloom around languages in the UK, and the threats are real and the hostilities are real. Even more reason then not to lose sight of the language's positivity that is championed by Baroness Coussins in her work, and what is underlined in the numerous reports into the potential return for investment into languages and cultures at a national and international level, and in the statements as well by STEM royal societies and academies. Returning finally then to Arrival, the weapon that is used by the unearthly visitors turns out to be language. A language gifted to humans to provide knowledge, mutual cooperation, strength, and progress. And in that spirit, it is my great pleasure to introduce Baroness Jean Coussins as our keynote speaker. Now, Jean, if you'd like to come up, and I'll say a few words to get you, if you're comfortable just standing next to me while I introduce you. So last year, I had a full 5 minutes to introduce Baroness Coussins when she received an honorary degree at the University of Glasgow for services to language and to linguists. And the 5 minutes still wasn't enough. I won't kind of embarrass Jean by going on too long here, but a few things I wanted to say. I first became with Jean's work in her role as co-chair of the all-party parliamentary group on modern languages. That work opened my eyes to the scale and scope of languages in the world, and to her founding point that languages and cultures extend to all areas of policy, whether or not policymakers realize it. That has been a central theme in Baroness Coussins' work as an independent crossbench peer, which she has held as a role since 2007, and where her principal parliamentary interests include languages, linguists, and international relations, especially Latin America and the Middle East. On the UK Parliament website, I thoroughly recommend that you have a look at the extensive spoken and written contributions put by Baroness Coussins over many years. They cover the Ministry of Justice issues, artificial intelligence, the protection of civilian interpreters in conflict zones, health and social care, international trade, peace negotiations, and so on. That appetite to work across subject areas also came through wonderfully in the speech that she gave on behalf of all the Commemoration Day honorary graduates last year, which conveyed the need for languages to work with STEM and other subjects, and to avoid those arbitrary attempts that one sometimes sees to set one subject up as superior or inferior to another. Baroness Coussins' other roles have included president of the Chartered Institute of Linguists, a patron of the Association of Language Learners. She has an honorary doctorate from the Open University as well as from Glasgow, and she is the recipient of a British Academy President's Medal. And Jean herself is a graduate and a student of languages, having learnt Spanish from scratch and is studying Spanish alongside French in her degree at Cambridge, and she's currently learning Arabic. So it's a huge pleasure to welcome Baroness Coussins today for her keynote on the theme of the importance of languages and an international mindset for success in the 21st century. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Stephen, and good afternoon, everybody. And thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this exciting and very timely event. I'm going to say a few words, not just about how smart many of you have been to choose to study languages, but also how that decision will have paved the way for you to have far more career advantages and choices in a global mobile labour market, perhaps in sectors or roles you'd never even considered before. There really has never been a better time to be a linguist or to have a language to add another string to your bow. And I realise that probably comes across as a very counterintuitive thing to say, against the background of the usual stereotypes of monolingual Brits who believe they needn't bother to learn other languages because everyone speaks English, don't they? So I'll be doing a bit of myth busting as well. So myth number one is, well, now we've left the EU, we needn't bother to learn languages anymore. Well, I've heard plenty of anecdotes from school teachers saying that their students are sighing with relief that they don't need to bother with their French lessons anymore because they won't need it in the future. Well, what a contradictory world these young people live in. On the one hand, retreating into a post-Brexit little island mindset, and on the other, being in instant contact every second of the day via their smart digital devices with anyone and everyone in the whole world. Scotland, of course, bucks the trend here with its 1+2 language policy at primary school, for which I can't compliment you enough, where children aged 5, I believe, start their first foreign language and the second at age 9. And I understand the success rate is impressive, with 99% of primary schools introducing that first language and over 3/4 a second. I think I've heard that secondary schools don't have quite the same take-up, but nevertheless, unlike in England, Spanish and Mandarin are increasing, even though French and German continue to decline. Happily, Scotland is the only UK nation that has maintained a government-funded National Centre for Languages, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that later. And that helps to sustain a strategic approach to language learning. Myth number 2 is that now we can always turn to Google Translate. We needn't bother to learn languages ourselves because a machine will do the job for us. But while machine translation undoubtedly has its place, I believe, and I'm sure you'll agree, that it can never replace humans when it comes to nuance or cultural sensitivity and complex understanding or meaning. It does work reasonably well for the standard European version of core Romance languages and for German, but its effectiveness plummets for languages with many different dialects, such as Arabic, and it can be nearly useless for languages which are less commonly included in AI training data, which includes many Asian and African languages. AI and machine translation commonly fail to detect sarcasm, irony, or humor, not to mention slang and euphemisms used in crime to disguise meaning. And that meaning is what human interpreters readily understand, but which leaves AI befuddled and hallucinating. The excellent language training in the Foreign Office, the diplomatic service, the armed forces, and the police and the security services is testimony to the importance of real people making a crucial difference with their language skills. Indeed, language skills are now a requirement for promotion in the armed forces and the Metropolitan Police. And it's no surprise that the latest recruitment drive being run by the National Cybersecurity Centre is targeting 3 specific groups of people: computer scientists, coders, and linguists. You might have seen an amusing story that made the media headlines a while ago to illustrate the pitfalls of turning to Google Translate. There was, stop me if I've told you all this before, there was a supermarket chain in Wales that had to redo all its signage above the aisles. And one of the new categories it had to put up a sign for in Welsh as well as English was alcohol-free drinks. Now, it turned out that the Welsh version said free alcohol instead of alcohol-free because the machine wasn't very hot on word order. Now, we can only shudder to think of what the infinitely more serious consequences might have been if machines, not people, were doing the translation and interpreting for soldiers on deployment in Afghanistan, or if algorithms, rather than specialist linguists, were translating what might be crucial, detailed information about terrorists or people traffickers. So let's move on to myth number 3, and that's everyone speaks English anyway, so what's the point of making an effort? But in the 21st century, English is not enough. Don't get me wrong, English is one of the major world languages, and we should be very proud that so many other people want to learn it. But speaking only English is as much of a disadvantage as speaking no English. In fact, only 6% of the world's population are native English speakers, and 75% speak no English at all. And in a post-Brexit world where the UK seeks to redefine its place and establish leadership in international relations, for the culturally agile, mobile, and interconnected jobs of the future. The amount of internet content in English is declining while content in Mandarin is soaring. Arabic is the most used language across all social media platforms, and there are more blogs in Japanese than in English. And French and German still regularly come top of UK employers' skill set wish list. Groundbreaking research by Professor Ayres Bennett at Cambridge University on the economic value to the UK of learning and using other languages included the amazing headline finding that if only we taught more people French, Spanish, Mandarin, and Arabic, we could increase UK exports by £19 billion a year. Research by the British Council added German to that list to give the top 5 languages needed by the UK for our prosperity and influence after Brexit. And you might be interested in what the next 5 languages after that were ranked in importance: Italian, Dutch, Portuguese, Japanese, and Russian. And I think it's important too that we mustn't forget our 2 million or so bilingual children and must make sure that they have the chance to gain academic qualifications in their home or heritage language, because many of those languages are the very ones of most strategic importance to the UK, whether in business, security, or diplomacy. I think it's strange in a way that other disciplines, such as classics or science or history, have thrown up high-profile media figures and primetime TV programs, but there aren't any TV linguists to help fire up the interest of the next generation in learning a language. And I think that that's because language and the cultural knowledge that goes with it isn't only just an academic intellectual discipline in its own right, it's also a vital enabling ingredient that runs through all languages, and so they become invisible. And yet, the demand for language skills has never been greater, and that goes for practically every sector of the economy, with higher than average demand in the financial services, IT and telecoms, passenger transport, fashion and design, and tourism. British companies are losing out on £50 billion worth of contracts every year because of a lack of language skills in the workforce. And that amounts to 3.5% of GDP. As new markets open up in the Far East, Central Asia, and Latin America, employers are looking not only for French and German speakers, but also Mandarin or Cantonese, Spanish, Russian, and Arabic. In the security and diplomatic services, and also in the world of development and humanitarian aid, as well as in business, there's a need for Farsi, Hindi, Turkish, Portuguese, and Korean, amongst others. The Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office now provides training in 86 different languages, and the Defence Academy for Language and Culture in 40 languages. And our ambassadors abroad are frequently complimented on the language skills of our embassy staff at all levels, and the UK has acquired a pretty good reputation for our language competence when in post. So when we do put our minds to it, we Brits can do brilliantly at languages. Thinking about humanitarian work, which I mentioned briefly just now, I just wanted to mention a splendid international NGO called Translators Without Borders. I don't know if any of you have come across them, but I've been working alongside them. They're the body who've provided interpreters and translators to work alongside the health professionals, for example, in Sierra Leone and other countries where the Ebola crisis broke out. Language was one of the main difficulties faced by humanitarian workers, and language isn't usually seen as a priority in an emergency response. And as a result, misinformation and panic can spread very quickly. Information in Sierra Leone was available mainly in English or French, but only a minority of the people affected spoke either of these. In Sierra Leone, only 13% of women understand English, and this led to important knowledge gaps. So Translators Without Borders, or TWB, developed its Words of Relief project, the first ever translation crisis relief network in the world. Hundreds of Ebola-related items were translated and disseminated, including posters, videos, cartoons, and maps. And more recently, TWB have deployed people into refugee camps in Bangladesh to disseminate accurate information about COVID and vaccinations in the right languages. Research from Reading University showed how much more effective the UK's development and humanitarian aid could be if language issues were taken into account at every stage of a project, from design to delivery. And thinking about your careers, we shouldn't forget the language industry itself either. This sector includes not just interpreting and translating, but also writing language teaching materials, such as textbooks, CDs, online resources, subtitling and dubbing for films and advertising, adapting websites for other countries, and much, much more. That sector is estimated to be worth over 20 billion euros across the EU and has a very high growth rate. So I reckon as an English-speaking nation, we are uniquely well placed to take strategic advantage of this expected growth, not only in Europe, but worldwide. For specialist linguists, another career path that's often overlooked is public service interpreting. These are the people who are needed every day in our courts and tribunals, police stations, and hospitals to translate and interpret for people whose English is either non-existent or not good enough to understand what's going on, often where their human rights, their liberty, or indeed their life might be at stake. So if that's a glimpse of the demand, let's have a quick look at the supply side of the equation. Sadly, out of the 164 universities in the UK, only around 50 now are still offering modern language degrees. The UK as a whole, in my opinion, needs to deal urgently with the hemorrhaging of languages from universities. Research has shown that unless more people develop their language skills, the UK simply won't be able to fulfill its economic, defence, or social policies. The total number of modern language graduates has declined by well over a half in the last decade or so. And even if every single one of the students currently doing languages went into teaching, we still wouldn't meet the officially predicted shortfall in MFL teacher numbers. In England, there is at least the incentive of MFL teacher training bursaries of £26,000 tax-free, though in Scotland, I understand that's only 20k tax-free and only for career changers rather than new graduates. So there's something for you all to start campaigning on, I think. Another factor to consider is the current trend for foreign language skills to become the preserve of a privileged educational elite. Languages up to the age of 16 are compulsory in 70% of independent schools, but only in 16% of state schools. And there are stark regional differences in participation and attainment, which correlate with regions of poor productivity and low skill levels and unemployment levels. So all of you, linguists and others, are already well ahead of the game, personally, professionally, and academically. Employers will make a beeline for you, whether you want to work explicitly as a linguist or whether you can offer one or more other languages as an add-on to your main role. Of course, that's because learning languages isn't just about grammar and vocabulary, wonderful though those are. It's also about learning about other cultures and countries. And trips and exchanges abroad can be inspirational and life-changing. One absolutely crucial element in what marks you out as gold dust is the year abroad. Taking a year abroad as part of your degree, whether you're a linguist or not, makes it 20% more likely that you'll get a first. Did you know that? And those who've taken a year abroad are also 23% less likely to be unemployed after graduation. And this is all because employers consistently say how much they value graduates who've had some international and cross-cultural experience. There was one study in the US that even reported employers rating language skills and an international mindset as even more important than expertise in the STEM subjects, although I hesitate to quote that after what you said about no competition between subject areas, but there we are. And the British Academy has shown how languages bring recognised transferable skills, such as problem solving and creativity, as well as that international mindset. And just to be completely self-interested about it, you might like to know that the Institute of Fiscal Studies says that 5 years after graduation, the median earnings of modern language graduates is well into the top half of the earnings table, higher than graduates in law, biological and physical sciences, business, or psychology. This all makes it all the more tragic that the government pulled out of the Erasmus Plus programme as part of the Brexit process. And neither the last nor the present government have shown the slightest interest in rejoining the programme, although we have seen some promising reports very recently about the government looking positively now at the latest EU proposal for a new youth mobility scheme. So eyes are peeled on that at the moment, and we'll see what emerges from the reset. Scotland was the UK nation with the highest participation rate in Erasmus Plus, and it would certainly be brilliant to see Scotland join Wales in leading the way, as Wales has done through its TAFE scheme, to rebuild a fully reciprocal mobility scheme to replace Erasmus, rather than the half-hearted Turing scheme that we've got now. Erasmus was abandoned on cost grounds, but in my opinion, it should be seen as an investment, not a cost. And the value of the year abroad goes for everyone, as I said before, not just the linguists. The way other disciplines intersect with languages is also important for the future viability and fundability of academic researchers in the UK. A great deal of the cutting-edge research which the next generation will be taking forward, for example, into climate change or counter-terrorism, is by definition international and comparative. And at the moment, it's graduates from the US, China, India, and EU countries who are more likely to have another language or two, in addition to their main subject, whether that be law, chemistry, geography, economics, or whatever. So please don't write yourselves out of participation and leadership in these important fields by letting your language skills go. And finally, I can't resist mentioning that we now know for sure that languages are good for your health. Research, robust research from Edinburgh University has shown that learning and using another language can delay the onset of Alzheimer's for up to 5 years and can also be of significant help in cognitive recovery after a stroke. So I think the value of language specialists is now much better understood than it used to be, both domestically and in international relations. This doesn't mean, of course, that everything is perfect. Especially when we think globally rather than just domestically. And another campaign that I'm supporting at the moment is to get a United Nations Security Council resolution on the protection of interpreters working in conflict zones. This would be along the same lines as the existing resolution on the protection of journalists. After all, at the end of a conflict, journalists go home, but the interpreters are local and so stay and face the vulnerability to kidnap, threats, torture, or death from the Taliban or whoever it happens to be. The Geneva Conventions are inadequate to protect these civilian interpreters, and I'm hoping to change our government's mind on supporting a new resolution. As for those of us in the UK, not everyone needs to be a professional linguist, but whether we're talking about better public services, in justice or in healthcare, improving human rights or negotiating trade deals, the social advantage, the economic advantage, and the soft power advantage in the 21st century surely belongs to the multilingual citizen and nation, and not to the blinkered Brit of the past who just thought all we had to do was shout more loudly in English. I hope I've given you a flavour of the huge range of possible career paths open to you, whether that's teaching, research, diplomacy, security and defence, business and commerce, public service, development or humanitarian aid. And I'm sure that's far from being an exhaustive list. I think the bottom line for me is that languages and an international mindset are the gateway to a more enriching and more civilized coexistence with other people. Thank you.
Jean, thank you very much. That was wonderful. Everything I hoped for and more. And we will have a chance to bring up speakers up together at the end to take questions. I'm just going to take a moment to make sure that we're ready for Jennifer's talk, and then I'll introduce Jennifer. So just bear with me while we wrestle with the slides. very much. Okay, so it's now my great pleasure to introduce Jennifer McHarrie. Do you want to come up, Jennifer, and just say a few words? So as Director of the Bòrd and Gaelic, Jennifer contributes to the leadership, the strategic direction, and the efficient management of the Bòrd. She leads on areas of education, learning, and language planning, and she works in partnership with a range of stakeholders, including national agencies, local authorities, and the Scottish Government to fulfil commitments in the National Plan for Gaelic, to which Jean's just alluded in her talk. Jennifer's passion for languages has followed her through school and university and the workplace as we're here, where proficiency in multiple languages has been essential to the various roles that she's had over time. She is a graduate of SMLC. She studied and completed an MA in French and Hispanic Studies, and that included working as a British Council language assistant in Spain, part of that Erasmus program studying in France. Jennifer learned Gaelic as an adult via a variety of different courses, including evening classes, college courses, and most recently, the University of Glasgow Cert HE Gaelic with immersion. She is, as you hear, an advocate for the benefits of bilingualism with experience of using languages in the workplace during other roles, such as in international export, translation, project management, qualifications development, and languages planning. So a living, breathing example of precisely the diversity that Jean was referring to earlier. So without further ado, Jennifer, thank you very much for coming back, and over to you.
Sorry. Okay. Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be back in Glasgow University. Where I spent a lot of happy time as a student. And today I'm going to give you a wee overview of how my passion for languages grew and developed and where it's taken me professionally and personally. And I will start off with my experiences at primary school. So this was long before the days of the 1+2 languages policy. I was very fortunate to go on lots of holidays abroad when I was younger, mostly to places like Mallorca. And, you know, at night time, you'd be going to the mini disco, hearing all the songs in Spanish and thinking, oh, this is amazing. I want to know what they're saying. Going back to school around the time of the Barcelona Olympics. And that's when we had, you know, a kind of project about that, learning our greetings and our numbers and things. And that picture there is actually a lady called Sabine. So she would have been one of the language assistants. Now, at that time, I had no idea really what language assistant was. I just knew there was a living, breathing French person in our classroom, and we just thought this was incredible. She was it was just great to be able to speak to her and hear, you know, her anecdotes as well. So that was like my first exposure to different languages as a youngster growing up in Lanarkshire. And then when I went to high school, a lot of it was, I really enjoyed their time learning French. I had a really inspiring French teacher around that time. Celine Dion was really big, she still is obviously, but she would play her albums to us and we would get to hear the songs in French as well. And at that point, we also had the opportunity to go to Paris on a school trip, which I was only in first year at the time, but without your parents, going with your classmates to a foreign country was just the coolest thing ever. Going to places like Parc Asterix. We also went to Brittany for a couple of days and we got to go and order crepes from the little van, and just having that chance to use what we learned in class and put it into practice, it was so exciting. And then like towards third, fourth year, I had another brilliant Spanish teacher. There's a theme here. We used language and music, brought that into the classroom. So we were listening to Enrique Iglesias, of course, and I just absolutely loved it. And I was good at it as well. So that kind of, when it came to thinking about what I might want to do after school, I thought, no, I think I'm definitely going to do languages, which brought me to Glasgow. I was accepted and did the Hispanic Studies, which we were really fortunate, included compulsory Portuguese and French. So my year abroad was in Santander in the north of Spain. I was really fortunate to go there because not that many people spoke English. So I wasn't in a hub of all international students. I lived with a teacher at the school who could not speak any English at all.
And I'm still friends with some of the staff from the school, going back again this summer. And I've passed that love on to my own family and my kids as well, who now see Santander as a kind of home from home for us. So all of that just due to that experience from the year abroad. Again, I've still got some cards. There's a bit of a hoarding theme going on here because I've kept everything to do with my time at uni. But I've got little thank you cards from the kids as well, because for me, people say to me, why do you still have all this stuff? For me, it's like the equivalent of throwing out my passport. It's shaped me as a person. It's who I am. So I just can't let them go. And I've just such good memories of that. So yeah, really life-changing experience in the north of Spain. And for French, I was very lucky to have my Erasmus experience in Nice on the sunny Côte d'Azur. And again, I've still got all my little tickets and welcome documents and things like that as well. And again, living with a French family at the time, that really helped my language skills. They could see the influence of Spanish on my French, because I would say things like que, and they'll say, no, you have to go que. And they could tell that I had been in Spain. So just getting my French back to scratch from them was great as well. And again, it was just a really fun time, and learned a lot from that as well. I think we had to translate from Spanish into French, so your brain was just exploding with the work we had to do, but it was really good fun. But the highlight for me, when I do like to dig this story out, because I am really proud of it, and it's nearly coming up to the 20th anniversary, which I cannot believe. I remember buying Nice Matin, the newspaper, and they were looking for staff to work at the Monaco Grand Prix. Now, I didn't really have a clue about Formula One, but I thought, this looks amazing. Because the thing that jumped out was multilingual. You had to have language skills. So I went along for a wee interview, spoke about myself and the skills and the languages that I had, and they offered me the role. Very glamorous ticket inspection role, but nonetheless, you got to spend 3 or 4 days in Monaco. It was just fab. But again, that was all due to having language skills. Without that, just wouldn't have been possible. And then the final kind of part of the study experience and language experience here at Glasgow was studying abroad for a month in Lisbon. We went to a language school there. And I've got, still got all my notes, but this was from we had a business and commercial Portuguese module. And at the time it was, it was one of the things we had to do. But I remember thinking, I wonder if I'll ever use this again. Like, it's great to have this knowledge, but where will I be after I graduate? What will I do? And actually, well, I'll come back to that. I'll tell you when I did use it. But yeah, again, being able to experience having time in a big city like Lisbon, using our language skills was really, really important. So after graduation, I was really fortunate. I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. I wasn't sure about translating or interpreting, but this role came up in international export. So I worked for a whiskey company in Glasgow, and on the job application must be fluent in Spanish and French and any other languages. And on must have been the first or the second day, there was an issue with an account in Portugal, and they said, "Oh, you need to chase them up about." It was about an invoice or something, but I remember having to write that email, and a good old business and commercial Portuguese came back, because at least I had the skills to be able to write that and structure it properly. And having the ability to forge relationships with different suppliers and customers, it really did make all the difference. We used to have an account in the Canary Islands. I still remember Salvador Dominguez. When he phoned the office, if I was out on my lunch, it was just like, we just couldn't communicate. You had to write a post-it note. Jennifer will phone you back, because if we didn't speak to him in Spanish, no business would happen. And that really was the reality of it. They really appreciated that as well, that you were, able to communicate with them in their language. So yeah, really, really enjoyed that time. And also, one of the products that we exported was actually Bleva, which I didn't speak Gaelic at that time, but that comes from the Gaelic word for very good. Spelling of it, well, not quite the same, but little did I know at that time that I would come to Gaelic later on. So yeah, And also this was during a time when people still used the telephone and had faxes. So your language skills were very much, you had to be able to communicate with people. And that also brought me a lot of opportunities in terms of travel as well. So I got to go in Cannes because I was looking at accounts, and then also went to visit suppliers and customers in Paris. So that was taken. It was La Maison du Whisky, and again going over there, being able to chat to them, found out all the bits about their company. You just were able to offer a bit more of a personal service to them as well, and just build that relationship from them. And that makes all the difference if you are familiar with their culture. So I'd been working there for a while, and I remember thinking, this is great, I've got all these languages. One of my close friends who I met at university as well, I used to hear her on the phone to her parents in Lewis, and she was a native Gaelic speaker. She couldn't speak English until she went to school. And I thought, I know all these languages. I thought I was quite multicultural, but I didn't really know anything about my own language and culture here in Scotland. So being a language geek, I just thought, I'll just start learning another language. And again, before the days of Duolingo or anything, I went to an evening class at the Glasgow Gaelic School and started to learn Gaelic as an adult. And I just kind of kept that more as a hobby at that time. It didn't lead to any work then. Little did I know where I would be later on. I moved to a role in translation project management. So as Baroness Coussins alluded to earlier, the language industry itself, that's a huge, so many opportunities there. So I would be project managing anything from translation, interpreting, subtitling, voiceover projects, and having that attention to detail, being able to, although I wasn't translating the documents themselves, we could do some extra proofreading when you come back, and translators they're so skilled, they're so talented, but even when they're working to really tight deadlines and pressure, the odd formatting error comes in or the odd mistake comes in, and you can pick that up as well. But I also was exposed to quite a lot of kind of myths around just what was involved as well. You would get a phone call saying, I've got this technical brochure that we've got, and we need it translated for 2 days. And I thought to myself, well, how long did the company take to put this brochure together in the first place? It probably took months and months, but it was this assumption that, languages, it's just something that you can do straight away. And although things can be done quickly these days, there's still a huge amount of skill and effort and time involved in these things. So your negotiation skills come into play there as well, having to subtly explain to people, no, you're not going to have 5,000 words delivered by tomorrow morning. But once you've got, again, that relationship and you can educate them a wee bit around what's involved, they do begin to understand. And after that role, I worked with SQA, the awarding body in Scotland, and I was involved with the Gaelic language plan for the organisation, but also the Gaelic medium qualification. So if anyone doesn't know, in Scotland, you can obviously learn Gaelic in the same way as French, Spanish as a language, but there's also qualifications for people in the medium of Gaelic as well. So people would sit their National 5 or higher history in Gaelic, amongst other subjects. So the Gaelic skills that I then acquired there were put to use, and I remember speaking to teachers and staff, and I would start off my chat with them, and then I would get all nervous and think, I can't carry on because I'm saying the wrong tense in Gaelic, and no one was correcting my grammar, but I just felt, being so, what's the word, just so enthusiastic about languages, I thought I have to get my Gaelic up to a standard where I can communicate with them. So that brought me back to Glasgow Uni. I was absolutely delighted about that. I had the support from my employer, and I completed an immersion course. And part of that, you'll see in the photograph, that's myself on the beach in South Uist. It was actually this time, I think, about 3 or 4 years ago. And again, it was that total immersion experience, speaking the language every day. There's people, the other girl in that photograph as well, she's actually German. I don't think I've ever heard her speak in English because we just spoke Gaelic to each other the full time. And after that experience, that's when, at the end of the week, was before I knew I was being interviewed for Radio na Gael, speaking in Gaelic. And I just thought, I used to listen to the radio in the mornings and think, I don't have a clue. I'll never get to that level. And then just being able to be interviewed and just having that confidence. So that's how I came back to Glasgow Uni and got to working in Gaelic, in Bòrd Gaelic, so we're a non-departmental public body. It gave me the confidence to even apply to work there as well, because I think there was maybe a perception of my own self-consciousness that I wasn't a native speaker, but as a linguist, I'd learned the language to fluency. I was really keen to almost act as an advocate for the language as well and be involved in the development work that the organisation does as well. And as you'll see, the aim is for Gaelic to be heard on a daily basis across Scotland. And I think it's around showing that there's no, I guess, hierarchy of languages. Yes, some languages are maybe more in demand or more important for other sectors, but whether I've learned, or anyone learns, I guess, Russian, Arabic, French or Gaelic, your brain is still getting the benefits of learning the other language. And there's definitely job opportunities with speaking Gaelic and other minority languages. So I'm very, very glad that I made that decision to learn Gaelic as well. So I've been using it. And that's given me opportunities to speak, although in this picture I was speaking mostly in English, but at the Scottish Parliament, given evidence as part of the Scottish Languages Bill, having that ability to deal with politicians and try and influence policy to make sure that Gaelic is considered at the outset rather than being an add-on. And I think that also rings true with what was said earlier on, something about languages being part of kind of cross-policy areas. The same is true for Gaelic. It's not just in the languages pocket, if you like. It cuts across housing, economy, infrastructure. So I'm really glad that I can be involved in trying to shape some policy decisions there. And out with the work as well, languages are just very much part of my day-to-day life. I'm learning Italian now on Duolingo. That always terrorises me every day. And if I don't get my streak done, I start to get a bit panicky. But we're so lucky now as well, I guess, like for language students, like although we had access to things, we couldn't watch things on Netflix or other providers or podcasts, or, we just didn't really have that apart from sitting in the Hetherington building with my wee head set us on trying to watch the news. So I feel really lucky now that we can still have that exposure to languages as well. And also, still carry on reading as well and just try and use it in as many ways as I can. As I said, it's a real part of my life, my identity. And if I could really just have a takeaway from that as well, it's just, learning Gaelic as an adult just has been really important for me to improve on the skills that I had at university as well. So as always, it's like a lifelong learning journey. You're maybe learning a language at the university just now, but it doesn't stop there. And I often quote, and if you got permission from it, you'd be a very rich man. But Dr. Thomas Back from the University of Edinburgh, he talks about having a healthy linguistic diet. And he talks about, instead of thinking about the benefits of multilingualism, we should be thinking about, the disadvantages of monolingualism, which I think is really true. And it kind of rings through with what we've heard earlier on, that it's something that really does set you apart. And I just, I'm just so glad that that's the choice I made to study, and I will keep on being a language geek and using it as many ways I can. So, like Moran Tang, thank you, and thanks for listening.
Jennifer, thank you very much. Some of the students in the room distinguished themselves in karaoke a while back at a school event. And to my delight, also my revelation, students were singing songs that they'd learnt during the year abroad. You could see how much the year abroad meant to them. And that came through so warmly and like meaningfully, Jennifer, from what you said there, that yes, this is about skills you can develop to succeed in life in professional ways. It's also about meaningful things that stay with you forever. So that's wonderful. Thank you. So our third and final speaker, taking the whiskey theme again, and Jean was referring earlier to free alcohol. Well, there will actually be free alcohol later on, courtesy of Jackie. But let me stop the Zoom share, and I'll say a few words about Jackie by way of introduction. I could just leave that up. Yeah. Oh, wait, you want to unplug it? All right, thank you. Might as well. Well, thank you. So Jackie McKee graduated from SMLC in 2001 with an MA Joint Honours in French and Italian. On graduation, she took up a post in the south of France for 3 years, working again for export sales, this time in the wine industry. With a desire to stay in the drinks industry, she returned home to Scotland in 2004 and joined the Scotch whisky industry as European sales and marketing assistant for the independent Scotch whisky producer Isle of Arran Distillers at a critical time in their development. Jackie is now head of marketing, global marketing that is, and she's worked with Isle of Arran ever since. And over the past 21 years, she's been a promoter of Scotland's national drink and of Scottish culture generally. So Jackie, welcome. Thank you very much.
Okie dokie. Well, thank you very, very much for that really warm welcome, and to everybody for coming along today. It's just joyful to be back here at Glasgow Uni, a mere 24 years after graduating, so we won't count the years, but it is lovely to be back. I think the last time I was in here was after my graduation ceremony. I remember having some photos taken out there in the hall with my late mum and dad, so the memories are really hitting me hard today. But it's great. It's really, really great. So my journey's, I guess, a long one. I discovered my love of languages as quite a wee girl. As Jennifer was talking about, we had languages at primary school. But really, my real love for languages came in when I went to secondary school. I went to a specialist music school in McHarrie, just outside of Glasgow, and I really got to grips with languages first through operatic arias with my voice tutor. So between the ages of 11 and 17, a lot of my language learning came from Mozart, Wagner, and it was that really that made me think. One of my favourite bits of the singing lesson was going through the translation of what I was singing, and I thought, I really think this is for me. Obviously, the love of music was there, but I think it was the love of music and languages combined that really set my career path off at that point. Combined with meeting a hugely inspirational teacher in my last year of secondary school, Miss Moore, I'll never forget her, and she introduced me to Italian. So having really only picked Italian up in 6th year, I went on to do a joint honours degree in it. So it just shows you can never really tell what's going to come across, going to come into your life. And Miss Moore certainly made a huge impact on mine. So having done 6 years at music school, I then dropped music and ended up here at Glasgow University doing a French and Italian degree. And really my time at university, as Jennifer said, it really coloured my life from there on, both at home and at work. After graduating, I had obviously spent my year abroad in France, loved it so much that I hot-footed it straight back to France, pretty much as soon as I hung up the robes, and started my first job in France. And I was really lucky to get a job in the drinks industry straight away, more or less, for a wine company, as Stephen said, who were looking for somebody who could manage all Anglophone countries, really, export sales for large and small wine producers. So I was their sales administrator, looking after US, UK, Canada, and a lot of Scandinavia. And it was fabulous. I had the best time. I picked up loads of other experience while I was working for the wine company. I made friends with the owner of the local translation school, language school, translation school, and she gave me some amazing opportunities to do a bit of translation at agricultural conferences along the south coast of France. I did a bit of courts work, translating and interpreting for a few people who had fallen foul of the local constabulary, shall we say, some badly behaved folks in the area. Did a bit of translating for families and lessons for families who were settling in the south of France. A family from New Zealand who the parents had got jobs in the area and the kids were needing a bit of help settling and learning French, and I did that. So there was just so many different opportunities available, which I would never have had if I hadn't had those language skills. So I would say that, as Jennifer said, and Baroness Cousin too, that year abroad really opened my eyes and gave me a bit of taste for a life that I was then able to build day to day after I graduated. I spent 3 years there and I loved it. But in 2004, I decided, okay, it's time to go back home to Scotland. I want to stay in the drinks industry, but wine production is not something that we do a lot of in Scotland, but we do make whiskey. So I looked for jobs in the whiskey industry and found a job at Elevaron Distillers that was too big for me at the time, but I said, just apply anyway. So I did, and I didn't get the job. But they said to me, look, we don't have a job for you right now, but you're just the sort of person that we would love to work with. So if you can hang on for maybe another few months, we'll see what we can do and see if there might be a role that we can develop for you. So you think people are just trying to be nice and it's the softly, thanks, but no thanks. But they were true to their word. And a few months later, they got back in touch and said, how do you fancy working in export sales on the other way around? Working with all the French and Italian speaking markets. And I jumped on it. And that was 21 years ago and I'm still there. So it has been a long journey in the one place, but I can tell you now that it's not been a boring one. So there were 3 of us in export sales at the time. The Lochranza distillery, which is one of our distilleries on the Isle of Arran, had only existed for 9 years. So we're looking at a business that's in its infancy, that is really needing to develop export sales. We had an unknown whiskey brand, so that's a difficult ask. But we also had a tourism destination in the form of our visitor centre. So we were not only selling a Scottish product, but we were selling a Scottish cultural experience and a tourism experience. So you can imagine that there's a lot of elements to that. It is very safe to say that at that time it was my language skills and everything that I had learned through the lens of a linguist that had really given me that springboard into that career and that role in export sales. So initially I was in charge of all of the Southern European markets and all French-speaking territories. It was a complete reversal to what I had been doing in France. But at that time, we were working in, so this was around about 2004, 2005, we were working in around 30 global markets. And we were turning over maybe just under £1 million in the business. Fast forwarding then to the end of last year, we were working in around 55 global markets and turning over just over £17 million. So you can see that journey in export sales has been quite steep for a small business. And I genuinely think that a lot of that is down to the skills of communication that a lot of the team had and still have. And that's come from language graduates, I have to say, a lot of the time. We've doubled our distribution network, and we did actually start doing that by focusing on Europe, particularly markets like France and Germany. Strategically, that made a lot of sense at the time because these markets are closer, they're cheaper to get to, quicker to get to, plus education around wine and spirits in these countries is really, really good. So that was really where I came into my own, because I was able to get out there and talk and communicate and communicate with people in the local language, and it made a really big difference. As Jennifer said earlier on, you know, there were some customers that if you didn't speak French or if you didn't speak Spanish, Italian, German, you simply wouldn't get a sale. And for us at that time, it was really critical to get that sale and to build that network and to build the global brand of our whisky. There's no doubt about it. Scotland's food and drink exports are so important and major players in the global stage. And there is no better example of that than whisky. Whisky is a protected category. You simply can't make it anywhere else but here. So if you are able to combine that with tourism, which we are, you really have a recipe for success. But I really genuinely believe that you can only do that if you approach it with a global mindset and attribute value to creativity and to culture. You have to be in it for the long game as well, because building a real proficiency and cultural awareness in a second language isn't easy, and it's not quick either. Despite what language apps will tell you, you can learn the words and you can learn how to say them well, but really being immersed in a culture and living it will take you so much further. So that's why I guess I do feel that when we're talking about what's the value in languages, if the failure to support languages, the language sector and linguists is really doing a lot of harm, not just to us as global citizens and as individuals, but also to the economy. Particularly, I can see it in my own job, the economic benefits that we've had from having linguists in the team. So, where have I got to? I've lost my place now. So I think we did use the skills of our team in the early days at Arran very well. We placed a lot of importance on them, and we still do now. We have 7 team members across our sales and marketing team, and 4 of us speak at least 3 languages. And one of us actually decided to move from here out to Taiwan so that he could be based in the region and actually be able to immerse himself in culture in that part of the world, simply because he felt it was important to do that in order to be able to connect better with customers and to help our brand grow in these areas. So again, it's things like hosting a whisky tasting. If you think that people are out for an evening or out for the day to enjoy a whisky tasting or whisky festival, they don't want to spend their evening trying to figure out what the host is talking about. Like they want to be able to communicate freely. And if you're able to do that in a local language, it just makes all the difference. So to focus on the here and now for me, I joined Arran So in 2005. My early career was spent very much travelling everywhere, learning loads, meeting so many people, forming amazing friendships with a lot of different people, and it has been great. But over the last sort of 15 years or so, my role has then evolved more into that of strategy and now heads of marketing, and I work still in a small team with 2 other amazing women who bring their marketing expertise and their cultural expertise and intuition into everything that we do daily. So I'm not a marketing professional as such. I didn't do a degree in marketing. I've just learned a lot over my years in the job. I've trained with some amazing people. I've learned and listened to some amazing people. And I guess it's one of these instances, as we've said, that you maybe don't know where your language degree is going to take you. You might not be sitting here thinking, I could work, I could grow a global brand. You could, you absolutely could. Myself and the team I work with, we are effectively guardians of our 2 global whisky brands, and we cover a massive range of things in our business. We work on product development. We write copy for websites, both in French and English and all sorts of other languages, not just our own. We design packaging. We develop the taste profile of a new whisky. We support our global distributors to sell our product in their market, and we help to develop the global campaigns for our whisky in meaningful ways that are culturally relevant in their markets. You won't be able, for example, to present your global brand campaign for your whisky the same way in Belgium as you will in Japan. You have to understand the cultural nuances, and that doesn't just go for the text that is used around it, the tasting notes, etc. It's just about how you physically present it and how you talk about it. So these are things that I feel that my language skills have come into their own. A lot of the skills of a good marketer are relying on you being able to add colour, nuance, to understand the difference that a word can make, and to be able to read between the lines, and really tell a story well. And a languages degree teaches you all of that. There's a lot of skills that are transferable, not least also multitasking, problem solving, being able to think about and do lots of things at once. Marketing professionals will tell you that's all they ever do. There's never just a few plates spinning. They're all spinning. So yeah, from music to language to marketing, I guess I've the journey's taken a few twists and turns, but languages do remain front and centre of everything that I love. And as Jennifer said, the passion from Jennifer is just, you can tell that she and I have been here and loved it, because the 2 of us can't speak highly enough of the experience we had here and where it's taken us. And it does pain me to hear that languages degrees are not receiving the support and value that they deserve, because for me, my degree has 100% shaped who I am. It's kept my curiosity alive, my horizons wide. It has built emotional intelligence, cognitive flexibility, empathy, and all of these things have actually helped me to develop leadership skills in my work as well, which are important. And they are written off sometimes as soft skills, but they are valuable and they're hard assets. And our bottom line at Isle of Arran Distillers economically has shown that. So yes, and speaking of whisky, we do have, as Stephen said, some drams in the Hetherington building that I hope you'll come and try with me later on. And in the meantime, just thank you for having me and having me to tell you my story. Thank you.
Jackie, thank you very much. I'm so pleased that our current students can hear from you and Jennifer as graduates, and what you said there about not being a marketing specialist, but the skills, the qualities that you developed as a person and as a linguist took you into that world. So thank you very much indeed. So how are we for time? 2:20. So what we're going to do now, just for the next perhaps 10-15 minutes and then wrap up, I'm going to invite Jean, Jennifer and Jackie to come through the pantomime door that takes us onto the stage. We will take some questions and then we'll wrap up. And as I say, if you are able to stay, please do, and we can continue the conversation over the drinks. But yeah, Jean, Jennifer and Jackie, if you'd like to make your way up, and then everyone can see us.
Right, I'll plug the laptop and take it with me. Jack, sure. But when you do that, you're going to lose access to the camera.
Oh, of course, okay, we'll leave it.
Yeah, that's fine. We can move everything all together though.
We can shift it.
Yeah, we have enough.
All right, okay.
Yeah, like
That's all right.
Yeah,
Awesome, thanks.
No worries at all. We will need to unplug the mains. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
I might not need to open it. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Some masturbating back to the primary school. That's an energy care Brexit. Let me just take a moment before we open up to ask Jean, Jennifer, and Jackie if there's any reflections that they'd like to make, having heard each other, and then we'll open it up.
Yes, I guess it's just been really lovely to hear that a lot of the experiences that you've had as well, Jennifer, are similar to mine. You know, we've had the same kind of journey actually, and it's funny that it was started off in the Scottish whisky industry, because I still think it's relevant now that it's a sector within Scotland that is hugely. It's one that language graduates still can really consider. Is all I would say. It's as relevant now as it was when we started.
No, I think that's something when I was doing my degree as well. I think things that come to mind quite often are teaching or translation, interpreting, and it wasn't really on my radar at all. And whether it be whisky or any other, consumer games, so I think anywhere that it exports that the language skills is a real key asset. I think when I joined initially, most of the team were language graduates, and it's almost kind of learned about a world of business. Like I think we spoke about this beforehand. I can tell you all about golden age prose and literature, but actually about how does the corporate world work. That wasn't something I picked up until I got out there. And your career does maybe you don't use languages in every job, but it's always with you. It's always something that you've got in your back pocket that can add value, as you say, whether it's recognised straight away. It's you don't even know that you're doing it, but it's something that you've picked up.
Yeah, I think the themes that have occurred in all our three talks have been the importance of the year abroad and the usefulness of transferable skills from any sector you want to be in, from what you've learned by doing languages. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. I'm concerned by the personal journeys that you've taken to get into languages. And I will recognise, there's family camping holidays through France, and for me, it's the magic of going around the corner with a few francs and a few words of French, as I don't know, a 10-year-old or something, coming out with a baguette, and the whole thing was just magic. I mean, Jean outlined the kind of the scale of the opportunity, but the scale of the deficit. How can we maximise the chance to give everybody the opportunity to study a language, to travel to another country, to get a pen friend to go on an exchange? How do we address the access question?
Well, obviously, it's really important to start young at primary school, and you've cracked that in Scotland. We haven't cracked it in England. It's meant to be a compulsory part of the national curriculum in England, but at least 25% of primary schools aren't doing it. But the reason is there aren't enough MFL teachers. And I think that one of the strategic problems that needs to be solved before any of the issues that I've raised to do with languages and the need for more people with more language skills is the supply chain of MFL teachers. It's got much worse post-Brexit. There are increasing numbers of EU nationals who've been trained in the UK as MFL teachers, then had to go back home after they'd qualified, and are now effectively barred from coming back to the UK, even though they've been offered jobs, because the cost of visas is prohibitive, And the school that has offered them a job can't afford to pay the visa sponsor fee either. And that's just one element that is blocking the supply chain of MFL teachers. The shortage of MFL teachers, I'm not sure about Scotland, but certainly England and Wales, is higher than for any other subject except maths. And as I said earlier, even if every modern language student at the moment went into teaching, we would still not hit the target recruitment. In fact, recruitment of MFL teachers has become so difficult now that the Department for Education in England has had to slash its recruitment target by 43% for this year. Now, we can't really make significant progress if we can't get the teachers, and I think that a lot needs to be done. The trouble is, it's just a vicious circle at the moment, with more and more universities scrapping modern language degrees because there aren't enough people doing A-level in languages to apply. It just goes round and round and round. So there's got to be some political will at the top to make it a strategic priority. One of the things that needs doing is universities need to have a more favourable funding formula to encourage them to keep modern language degrees, and especially to keep the third year abroad, because I think that financially is a problem for many universities as well. But the teacher supply chain, I think, is one of the top 3 problems we've got. Don't get me started on AI.
Jean, thank you. A lot of people in the room here for me too much anyway. Let's open it up and see if there are some questions in the room. And I'll keep an eye on the Zoom chat as well. So if you're on the Zoom and you'd like to ask a question, please put it in and I'll try to pick it up. We do have a roving mic somewhere. Yeah. So who would like to ask a question?
I'm actually just back from the year broadcast here, and I chose one of these because of year broadcast. I knew it's so important, and I came up for writing participation. So I work with a lot of students who have children and parents and responsibilities, and the actual cost of being involved for me was so practical. I have a partner who helped me. Most of people writing participation didn't have that, and how do we make it so that people who suddenly don't have one can still go?
Yeah, important question. Study abroad and a chance to go actually first year perhaps, or end of first year. The student having the chance to go abroad is an area of focus in philanthropy. So the University Philanthropy team receive particular interest from alumni or general donors in the university who are kind of key to support in that area. So it's an area that's recognised as needing support. I appreciate that none of our guests work for the university or supporting study abroad, but is there anything you'd like to add or say on that? It's fine if not. As I say, I appreciate it's a university-focused question for us. It is a challenge.
From my own point of view, funding's really different now as well. When I did my year abroad, we were working distance and we had a salary. And I'll be honest, if I hadn't had that salary, I probably wouldn't be able to do it either. Yeah, I was interested too, but the cost of the have gone up a lot, houses, the cost of things like that. As I said, €250 just to get residency when I arrived. So that is just bonkers. You know, it really is. And I was complaining because I had to wait in the queue for a practice jour that I didn't have to pay €250 for it. And once I got to the queue, that's a big, it's a big concern.
Thank you. And Jean alluded to the Erasmus programme and the possibility or the prospect that perhaps Scotland would try some fashion of affiliate membership or some kind of post-Erasmus opportunity that goes beyond touring. I mean, one of the things one often hears for right to your MP makes noise about it. Jean, you're connected to the kind of the parliamentary world. You know, is it the case that if we write to our MPs, you know, does that make a difference? And if not, who else should we be lobbying in terms of actions that we can all take away and think about afterwards?
Yes, I guess it's always worth writing to your MP. I mean, I have the luxury of being a independent crossbencher in the Lords, which means I'm non-party political. So I have the luxury of being able to say and do what I like when I like. Nobody whips crossbenchers to vote in a particular way. And there are a lot of peers and MPs, though, who are members of the all-party group on modern languages, more and more. So, yeah, always write to MPs because they have, you know, a constituency interest. If you know that there are schools in your area where languages are being dropped or not started in the first place, get onto the MP of that area and say how his or her future voters are being disadvantaged and shortchanged if they're not being able to have access to language learning. That should wake them up a bit, especially if it's near an election.
Thanks very much. Yeah, please, go to reach.
I'm feeling kind of lecturing Scots national languages at the University of Strathclyde. It's been really interesting after listening to everyone, and really just a comment from Jackie. I used to be the head of the department, or was it actually, and for her life, and I would pass on to Pauline. Human was her inspirational. She was. She's delighted to hear about the influence she's had on your life, and I'm sure if you're ever passing by on this academy, she will love you to go in. She's still there. Yes, she absolutely is. Watching, I'm going there. But I think what you pointed out, in fact, all three of you is the importance of inspirational teachers. And it's not just a case of anyone who can teach. We need to have the right teachers, we need to have the right teachers, and we need to have the right teachers, people who really want to be there, who really want to pass on their skills to the next generation of young people. Our targets are not being met in Scotland either, and it's a real concern. And I think it's all tied in. We've got all these moving parts that are part of the same issue. If we don't have people coming into personally, then we can't have the teachers. But likewise, if it's too expensive to do abroad, then we're not getting abroad church of people into languages degrees. People who do not ever want to be in a situation where languages degrees become the reserve of a middle class elite. And I think some big social justice issue happens. And I would say Jenny Goldberg, our cabinet secretary, is broadly very supportive of languages, and is definitely worthwhile lobbying.
That's amazing. Just on that, you really makes me that. So we're, I will not be notes.
That was really lovely to see how far this goes. Good. Yeah, Louise, and then I'll maybe ask a question just to wrap things up. But yes, Louise, please. Thank you very much.
One of the things between the council is reassessing or reevaluating the year abroad costs of you touched on the funding models and other things. Thinking of the year abroad more as a language lab experience or a lab experience as opposed to a year students do everywhere else. We bring it into align it more with other needs that have a higher funding model in the office for students, where STEMs, the leads, universities, higher grants, and other subjects, so languages, social sciences, the bottom of the country. Is there any track in the mentioning in where it is taken forward?
Can you summarise the question?
Yeah, so Louise is referring then to the discussion at UCFLS, which is the UCFL, the University Council of Languages, which unifies the different UK education institutions. A conversation about linking language this year abroad as a subject to a higher fee band. So comparable with STEM subjects, so considering the year abroad would be a lab experience, and that would help address some of the structural funding deficits that have been alluded to earlier, and help support study abroad and financially.
Yeah, I think the university funding needs to be, for languages, needs to be put in, I think it's called category C1 of strategic funding. I think that's UK-wide, which it isn't at the moment, but it's a decision for the Office of Students, I think, rather than the government. So I've been trying to speak to ministers about how they can encourage or expect the Office of Students to upgrade language funding into category C1 for strategic subjects. At the moment, I think it only goes into subjects like medicine, which are assumed, well, rightly, to be more expensive to teach. But I think that nobody has bothered to factor in the cost of the year abroad and come to the conclusion that modern languages is also has an extra cost as well. So again, that's another one of another strand of my lobbying work that I'm going to be continuing with in Parliament.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you for lobbying on our behalf. We've worked with speakers very hard. This is a final opportunity or an invitation to our students. I'm so pleased that many of you have come here today. I hope you found it inspiring, but also kind of reassuring to hear from two graduates as well as from Jean at that overall level. I hope you might be able to kind of come back to us in the years to come and share, how you've got on in life and where you've got on, where the degree has taken you. Is there anything that you would like to ask? We've got three, really wonderful people here who are happy to share where they've been and their thoughts. Are there any questions you would like to put? It's fine if not. Students in the room. Yes, there's a question there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm here PhD students here, but I'm not from the university. But I'm really interested because part of the journey of the PhD, I'm talking a lot about the religious company rural businesses in Scotland. And then they are talking about the same things, about how the businesses, not only the business, but it's like empowering community, cultures, and everything. That's why when I got the email, and it's talking about also how cultural the business is concerned. One of you, for example, for Jennifer or David, I want to know in Jennifer, you're talking about Gaelic culture and then moving forward as same with you, that when you're talking about build the awareness of the Scottish cultures as well, and then how is it related to the business you are in? So that's the main reason I'm actually coming to this.
No, I think I had the same thought. So exports are nice, economic growth is nice, but those are not necessarily intrinsic goods either. We need to think about community cohesion, environment, sustainability, over tourism, etc., etc. So yeah, a question about what the business is beyond. Who would like to go first?
Thanks for that question, and it's good timing. Actually, last week, to the Highland Council, they had a conference all about the economic impact of Gaelic in business, and there's been studies also carried out by Glasgow City Council as well, showing that the impact that Gaelic can bring to the economy in terms of things like events and tourism, and again we speak a lot about taking the skills and using them elsewhere, but actually having a language like Gaelic or any other, the same could be said for Welsh or any other, or I'd like to say community or heritage languages, are all languages, but where people can use their community language in a professional, in a working environment, and there are definitely more opportunities for that. I mean, before I started learning Gaelic as well, I wasn't aware of the amount of groups and organisations, cultural organisations, community groups, but also people that use it as a day-to-day language in their business. I mean, it sounds obvious, but when I log into my computer every morning, the internet is on Gaelic. because we're all Gaelic speakers, but having your conversations in email, things that I guess it's a language skills that I maybe wouldn't have traditionally thought that I would be using, but it's definitely exists, and I think more people are seeing the benefit of that and are looking to incorporate Gaelic into their business, which for whiskey, we keep coming back to whiskey, but so many the place names and you know, people hear lots of different pronunciations of whiskey names, but it's connected all around us, the landscape and the environment, and it's just, I think more people are becoming aware of that.
I mean, I could literally talk for hours about this, but in terms of, for us as an island business, so our business is a massive contributor to our island community. We employ a lot of local people at both of our distilleries on the island. We have around 90 employees in total in our business, and 75 of them are on island. So from that alone, it's important to us as an exporter also to focus firmly on our community and our island environment. There's lots of other elements that, you know, specific to the whisky industry that we also work with the community on: peatland restoration, sustainability, the list is long. But to bring it back to languages, that we can only do that, and we can only be that level of employment on the island if we continue our export growth, because the vast majority of our revenue as a business is obtained from export sales. So, and having the cultural ability to sell globally is the most important thing for us to be able to then anchor our business in the community. I think that helps a bit.
Thank you. That's a really excellent funding question to bring it all together. So we'll wrap it up there. Thank you all very much indeed for coming. If you'd like to join us in heading to the 60, please do walk back up with us. We'll have some drinks. I want to thank Sarita again for all the work to organise the event. As David, and is it Adam? It is. David and Adam helping out with the tech. This has been an experimental event, but something I think wanted to continue in support. Thanks for coming along and making it happen. And a huge thank you individually and collectively to our three speakers, Baroness Jean Coussins, McHarrie, and Jackie McKee, for all that you shared with us today. We wanted to make some positive noise about languages, to be realistic as well, to honest the challenges, but also to generate some connections to our students and a lovely personal connection back to Jackie that's emerged as well. So thank you very much for being part of the event. And as I say, if you're able to stay, please do join us. Thank you.